My brother got my wife pregnant and my parents took his side. So I disappeared. Now he's dying, and they need me back. My name is Ethan Miller, and for 7 years, I let everyone in my hometown believe I was heartless. They said I abandoned my family. They said I disappeared when things got hard. They said I turned my back on my dying brother because I was too bitter to forgive the past. And for a long time, I never corrected them. Because the truth was uglier than anything they were saying. The truth was that my brother didn't just betray me, he got my wife pregnant, and my parents took his side. I was 34 when my life ended the first time. Not legally, not physically, I was still breathing. Still walking around in the same body. Still going to work, paying bills, answering emails, nodding politely at neighbors, but something inside me died that spring. Before everything fell apart, I thought I had a good life. Not perfect, but good. I had a small house on the edge of Cedar Falls, Iowa, with a front porch my wife used to decorate every season. Pumpkins in October. White lights in December. Flowers in the summer. She said a house should look like someone inside was happy. Her name was Claire. We met when I was 26 at a charity run I didn't even want to attend. My mother had guilted me into going because the company she worked for sponsored it. And she said it would be good for me to meet decent people, instead of hiding behind work. Claire was standing by the registration table, laughing at something with her friend, wearing a blue windbreaker and a ponytail that kept falling loose. I remember thinking she looked like sunlight. That sounds embarrassing now, but it's true. She was warm, funny, and bold in the way I wasn't. I was careful. I planned things. I saved money. I thought before I spoke. Claire walked into rooms like she expected life to greet her kindly. For a while, life did. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. My parents loved her immediately. My father said she brought energy into the family. My mother said she was exactly the kind of woman I needed because I was too serious for my own good. My older brother, Ryan, liked her too. That should have bothered me more. Ryan was 2 years older than me, but he had always acted like life owed him extra. He was charming when he wanted to be. Handsome in that effortless way people noticed first. He was the guy teachers forgave, girls chased, bosses gave second chances to, and my parents protected no matter how many times he messed up. Growing up, Ryan was the golden son. If he failed a class, the teacher must have been unfair. If he wrecked Dad's truck, he was just young and impulsive. If he borrowed money and never paid it back, he was struggling and needed support. If I complained, I was jealous. That word followed me for most of my childhood. Jealous. I learned early that in my parents' house, Ryan's mistakes were accidents, and my reactions were character flaws. Still, I loved him. That's the part people don't understand. I didn't hate my brother. I looked up to him when we were kids. I wanted him to be proud of me. I wanted us to be close. Even as adults, I kept trying. When Ryan got fired from his job at a car dealership, I helped him rewrite his resume. When he needed rent money, I gave it to him. When he went through a breakup and spent 3 weeks on our couch, Claire cooked for him every night, and I told myself that was what family did. I didn't see the danger, or maybe I saw it and didn't want to admit it. There were moments, looking back, small things, Claire laughing too hard at Ryan's jokes, Ryan touching her shoulder when he walked past. My mother saying things like, Ryan and Claire have the same sense of humor, as if that was charming instead of strange. My father making a toast one Thanksgiving about how lucky our family was to have Claire, then joking that Ryan should have found someone like her first. Everyone laughed. I did too. Because I trusted them. That was my first mistake. By our 6th year of marriage, Claire and I were trying for a baby. We had been trying for almost a year. Every month began with hope and ended with quiet disappointment. She cried in the bathroom more than once. I held her and told her we had time. I meant it. We went to appointments. We did tests. The doctor said everything looked normal, which somehow made it worse because there was nothing to fix. Just waiting. Just hoping. Then, one rainy Thursday evening, Claire told me she was pregnant. She stood in the kitchen holding the test with both hands, trembling. I stared at it like I didn't understand what it was. Then I laughed. Then I cried. Then she cried. We held each other beside the sink while rain hit the windows and the whole world seemed to soften around us. For 3 weeks, I was the happiest man alive. My parents cried when we told them. My mother hugged Claire and said, "Finally, our family is growing." My father slapped my back so hard I almost dropped my coffee. Ryan smiled, hugged me, then hugged Claire a little too long. I noticed. But I pushed the thought away. Because suspicion felt like poison. And I didn't want poison in the happiest moment of my life. The first crack came at the first ultrasound. Claire was nervous that morning. Not normal nervous. Shaking nervous. She barely spoke in the car. I thought she was afraid something would be wrong with the baby, so I kept reassuring her. The technician moved the wand across her stomach and smiled. There's the heartbeat. I heard it. Fast. Tiny. Real. I looked at Claire, expecting joy. But she was crying in a way that didn't look happy. The technician printed photos. I held them like sacred paper. On the drive home, Claire stared out the window. That night, I found her in the nursery. We had already painted it pale green because we didn't know the gender. She was sitting on the floor, one hand over her stomach, whispering, "I'm sorry." I asked her what she meant. She jumped like she had been caught stealing. "Nothing," she said. "I'm just emotional." I believed her because I wanted to. The truth came 3 weeks later. It was a Sunday afternoon. My parents were hosting lunch. Ryan was there, along with my aunt, my cousin, and a few family friends. Claire said she didn't feel well and stayed home. I almost stayed with her, but she insisted I go. Halfway through lunch, I realized I had left my phone charger at my parents' house the week before, and I went upstairs to my old bedroom to look for it. That room had become storage. Old boxes, photo albums, Christmas decorations, my mother's extra blankets. While I was digging through a drawer, I heard voices from the hallway. My mother and Ryan. I wasn't trying to listen at first. Then, I heard Claire's name. My mother said, "You need to stop acting so nervous around Ethan. He's going to notice." Ryan said, "I know." My body went cold. My mother lowered her voice, but not enough. "Claire is already falling apart. If you keep looking at her like that, you'll make it worse." Ryan said, "What do you want me to do, Mom? It's my kid." I stopped breathing. There are moments in life when your mind refuses information because it is too large to enter all at once. I stood there with my hand on an old desk drawer, hearing my own pulse in my ears. My mother said, "No. It is Ethan's child. That is what we agreed." Ryan laughed, but it sounded broken. "That's easy for you to say. It is what's best for everyone," she snapped. "Ethan will be a good father. Claire stays in the family. You don't ruin your brother's marriage over one mistake." One mistake. That was the phrase that opened the door to hell. I stepped into the hallway. Ryan saw me first. His face drained of color. My mother turned slowly. For 1 second, nobody spoke. Then I said, "What did you just say?" My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Ryan whispered, "Ethan." I walked toward him. Not fast, not yelling. Something worse than anger had taken over me. I felt calm in a way that terrified even me. "Say it," I said. "Say exactly what you meant." My mother tried to touch my arm. I pulled away so sharply she flinched. Ryan looked down at the floor. "It happened once," he said. My whole childhood flashed through my mind. Every excuse. Every time my parents protected him. Every time I was told to be understanding because Ryan was Ryan. I said, "When?" He didn't answer. I turned to my mother. "When?" She looked like she might cry. But not from guilt. From fear of consequences. "Ethan. Sweetheart, we need to talk about this carefully." "When?" Her lips trembled. "About 2 months before Claire found out." The hallway tilted. 2 months. I had been calculating dates in my head since the ultrasound. Something had felt slightly off, but I had told myself I was being paranoid. Claire's cycle was irregular. The doctor had given a range. There were explanations. There were always explanations when you didn't want the truth. I said, "Does Dad know?" My mother said nothing. That was answer enough. I walked downstairs. My father was at the dining table telling a story, laughing with my uncle. I stood in the doorway, and something about my face killed the room. Dad stood up. "What happened?" I looked at him. "You knew?" His expression changed. Not confusion, not surprise. Guilt. My aunt asked, "Knew what?" I didn't look away from my father. "You knew Claire's baby might be Ryan's." The room exploded. My mother came rushing down behind me, saying my name. Ryan followed, pale and silent. My father said, "This isn't the place." I laughed once. It sounded nothing like me. "No? Where's the place, Dad? The nursery I painted? The bedroom I share with my wife? The doctor's office? Where I cried hearing another man's baby's heartbeat?" My mother started crying then. "Please, Ethan. It was a terrible mistake." Claire was confused. Ryan was lonely. You and Claire had been under so much pressure trying for a baby. I stared at her. Somehow, she was blaming me. "So my wife slept with my brother because we were stressed?" "No, that's not what I mean." "That is exactly what you mean." Ryan finally spoke. "I didn't plan it." I turned on him. "You didn't plan to sleep with my wife?" He swallowed. "It just happened." I stepped closer. "How many times?" He looked at my mother. That look told me everything. I said, "How many?" My mother whispered, "Ethan, don't do this." "How many?" Ryan's voice cracked. Three. Not once. Not one drunken mistake. 3 times. My father said, "Son, we were going to tell you after the baby was born." I looked at him like he had started speaking another language. "After?" He had the nerve to look ashamed. "We thought if you bonded with the child first." I almost fell. That was their plan. Let me raise my brother's child without knowing. Let me sign the birth certificate. Let me bond. Let me become trapped by love. Then maybe, Someday, if the truth came out, I would be too attached to leave. My own parents had helped design the prison. I drove home in silence. Claire was sitting on the couch when I walked in. She saw my face and stood. She knew. Before I said a word, she knew. I said, "Is the baby Ryan's?" She covered her mouth. That was all I needed. I went upstairs and packed a bag. She followed me, sobbing, saying my name over and over. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she cried. I was scared. We were trying so hard. I felt broken. Ryan understood me. I folded shirts into the bag with hands that barely felt attached to my body. She said, "I love you." That stopped me. I turned around. "No, Claire. You loved what I gave you. Safety, patience, a home. A man who trusted you enough to never check your phone, never question your excuses, never imagine you could do this." She cried harder. "Please don't leave. We can fix this." I looked at her stomach. Fix what? The affair? The pregnancy? The fact that my family sat around deciding how long to lie to me. She reached for me. I stepped back. "I need a paternity test." She shook her head. That small movement destroyed the last piece of me. "You already know," I said. She whispered, "I'm sorry." I left that night. I didn't go to my parents. I didn't go to a friend. I drove until the town lights disappeared behind me. I checked into a motel 2 counties over, and sat on the edge of a bed that smelled like bleach and old smoke. My phone rang for hours. Claire, Mom, Dad, Ryan, Claire again, then texts. "Please come home. We need to talk. Don't make a decision while angry. Ryan is devastated too. Your mother is sick with worry. Think about the baby." That last one came from my father. Think about the baby. Not one of them said, "We are sorry we destroyed you." By morning, something inside me had hardened. I called a lawyer. Then I called my boss and requested a transfer I had once turned down. Our company had an office in Denver. They needed someone to manage operations. I had refused months earlier because Claire didn't want to leave Iowa. Now Iowa had nothing for me. The divorce was ugly in the quietest way. Claire didn't fight for money. She didn't have the energy. She kept saying she wanted me back. She said she would give the baby up for adoption if that was what it took. That sentence made me feel physically sick. I told her the child was innocent, but I was not the father. I would not raise a child created by her affair with my brother just to make everyone else comfortable. The paternity test confirmed what everyone already knew. Ryan was the father. When the results came, my mother called me 23 times. I answered once. She was crying. "Ethan, please, this baby is still your family." "No," I said. "That baby is Ryan's family. You're being cruel." There it was. After everything, I was cruel. I said, "Mom, you helped them lie to me. We were trying to protect you." "No, you were protecting Ryan." She went silent. I said, "Like always." My father got on the phone. "Enough. Your mother is falling apart. Your brother is ashamed. Claire is pregnant and alone. You need to stop punishing everyone." I almost laughed. "I'm the punishment? You walking away from your family is not the answer." I said, "Watch me." Then I hung up. 2 weeks later, I left Cedar Falls. I changed my number. I blocked every account. I deleted social media. I told my lawyer all communication had to go through him. I sold the house at a loss just to be free of it. I disappeared. At least, that's what they called it. But I didn't disappear. I rebuilt. There is a difference. Denver was hard at first. I had no friends, no family, no history. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment near the highway because it was all I could afford after legal fees and selling the house. For months I lived like a ghost. I went to work, came home, ate frozen dinners, and slept badly. Some nights, I woke up hearing that ultrasound heartbeat. Some mornings, I forgot for 3 seconds that my life had collapsed. Then memory returned, and I had to survive the day all over again. Therapy helped. Not immediately. At first, I sat in a chair across from a woman named Dr. Patel and said almost nothing. I didn't know how to explain that the affair hurt, but the conspiracy destroyed me. Cheating was one knife. My parents helping hide it was another. My father planning to let me bond with the baby before telling me was something I didn't even have words for. Dr. Patel gave me the words: betrayal trauma, family enmeshment, scapegoating, emotional manipulation. For the first time, someone looked at my story and didn't ask me what I had done to cause it. She said, "You are allowed to leave people who require your pain as the price of their peace." I wrote that sentence down. I kept it in my wallet for years. Slowly, I built a life. I worked hard because work was the one place where effort produced results. I got promoted, then promoted again. I started running. I bought furniture that Claire had never chosen. I learned to cook for one. I made friends with a neighbor named Marcus who dragged me to a barbecue even after I said no 3 times. At that barbecue, I met Hannah. She was a nurse, divorced, with a dry sense of humor, and a laugh that didn't ask anything from me. We became friends first. I told her early that I was divorced and complicated. She said everyone over 30 was complicated unless they were lying. I didn't fall in love quickly. I couldn't. Trust came back like a broken bone healing wrong at first. Tender, stiff, afraid of pressure. But Hannah was patient without trying to rescue me. She didn't demand details before I was ready. She didn't punish me for having bad days. She didn't say, "You need to move on," which was the phrase I hated most. 3 years after I left Iowa, I told her everything. We were sitting on my balcony while the city glowed below us. I expected her to look horrified. Instead, she took my hand and said, "I'm so sorry they made you carry that alone." That was the moment I knew I loved her. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony in the mountains. No family from my side attended. I had invited no one. Hannah's parents came. Marcus stood beside me. Dr. Patel sent flowers. For the first time in years, I felt like the people around me wanted me whole. Not useful. Not silent. Whole. Hannah and I had a daughter named Lily. The first time I held her, I cried so hard the nurse asked if I needed to sit down. Lily had Hannah's nose and my dark hair. She opened one tiny eye like she was already suspicious of the world. I promised her I would never make her earn love by swallowing pain. Years passed. I stopped checking for messages from Iowa. I stopped wondering if Claire had married Ryan. I stopped imagining what the child looked like. I stopped rehearsing speeches I would never give. Then, on a Tuesday morning in October, 7 years after I left, my past found me. I was at work when my assistant said there was a woman downstairs asking for me. She looked uncomfortable. She says she's your mother. For a moment, the room went silent around me. I had not seen my mother in 7 years. I had imagined this moment before. In those imaginary scenes, I was powerful. Cold. Prepared. In real life, my hand tightened around a coffee mug until my fingers hurt. I told my assistant to put her in the small conference room. When I walked in, my mother stood by the window. She looked older. That was my first thought, and I hated myself for it. Her hair had gone mostly gray. Her shoulders looked smaller. She clutched her purse with both hands like she was afraid someone would take it. When she saw me, she started crying. "Ethan." I stayed by the door. "How did you find me?" She flinched. "Your father hired someone." "Of course he did." I said. "You have 5 minutes." Her face crumpled. "After 7 years? That's all I get?" "You got 6 more minutes than you deserved by showing up at my workplace." She wiped her eyes. "I know you hate us." "No," I said. "I don't hate you. I don't trust you. There's a difference." She nodded quickly, like she would agree to anything as long as I didn't leave. "It's Ryan." I felt nothing at first. Just a blank space where a reaction should have been. "What about him?" "He's sick." I waited. My mother swallowed. "Liver failure. It's advanced. He needs a transplant." I stared at her. The world narrowed. Then she said the sentence I had somehow known was coming. "You might be a match." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was screaming. My mother stepped forward. "Please. He's dying." I said. "Then why are you here?" "Because you're his brother." I looked at her for a long time. 7 years collapsed into that room. The hallway, the ultrasound, the motel, the word cruel. I said, "I was his brother when he slept with my wife." She closed her eyes. "I know. I was his brother when you helped hide it. I know. I was his brother when Dad said you were going to let me bond with his baby before telling me the truth." She sobbed into her hand. "I know." "No," I said. "You don't. Because if you knew, you wouldn't be standing here asking for part of my liver." She whispered, "He has a son." That hit something. Not guilt. Recognition. The child. Claire's baby. Ryan's son. I said, "How old?" 6. "Of course. Almost 7. His name is Noah," she said. "He's innocent, Ethan." I looked out the window at downtown Denver, at people walking below with lives that had no idea mine was splitting open again. "I know he's innocent." "Then please." I turned back. "Do not use that child as a weapon against me." My mother looked ashamed. "Good." I said. "Where is Claire?" She hesitated. "She and Ryan married after you left." "It didn't last. They divorced 3 years ago." A bitter smile touched my mouth before I could stop it. So the great love story collapsed. My mother looked down. "It was complicated." "No. It was predictable." She said Ryan had struggled after I left. Drinking. Job losses. Debt. Fights with Claire. My parents had helped with money, babysitting, bills. They had raised Noah half the time because Ryan was unreliable and Claire was overwhelmed. As she spoke, I felt something dark and old moving in my chest. Not satisfaction. Not exactly. Maybe grief wearing a different mask. My mother said, "Your father is outside." "Of course he is." "He wanted to come in, but I told him I should speak first." "How strategic." She flinched again. I was not proud of how sharp I sounded, but I also did not soften. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. "Ryan wrote you a letter." I didn't take it. She placed it on the table. He wants to apologize. I stared at the envelope. He had 7 years. He was ashamed. No, he was comfortable. My mother had no answer. I opened the conference room door. We're done. Panic crossed her face. Ethan, please, just get tested. You don't have to decide anything today. Just see if you're a match. I said, no. She looked like I had slapped her. You won't even check? No. He could die. People die, Mom. Her mouth trembled. How can you say that? I stepped closer. Because when my life died, all of you told me to stop being dramatic. She started crying again. I walked her to the elevator. My father was in the lobby. He stood when he saw me. For 1 second, I saw him as he had been when I was a kid, tall, solid, certain, the man whose approval I had chased for years. Now, he looked tired. But his eyes still had that same authority, like he expected the world to rearrange itself when he spoke. Ethan, he said. I said nothing. He glanced around the lobby. Embarrassed. Can we talk somewhere private? No? His jaw tightened. Your brother is dying. I heard. We need your help. I looked at him. No, Dad. Ryan needs my organ. You need relief from the consequences of protecting him. His face reddened. This is not the time for old grudges. There it was. 7 years. And he still knew exactly how to reduce my pain into something petty. I said, you don't get to decide how old betrayal has to be before it stops mattering. My father lowered his voice. If Ryan dies and you could have helped him, you'll have to live with that. I nodded. Yes, I will. He stared at me. He had expected guilt to work. It didn't. Not because I was heartless. Because I had spent 7 years learning the difference between guilt and responsibility. I was not responsible for Ryan's affair. I was not responsible for his drinking. I was not responsible for his liver. I was not responsible for healing a family that had chosen to break me. My father said, you've become cold. I smiled sadly. No, I became unavailable. Then I walked away. That night, I told Hannah everything. She listened without interrupting. Lily was asleep down the hall, a stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Our house smelled like lavender detergent and the soup Hannah had made for dinner, a normal night, except my dead past was standing in the living room. When I finished, Hannah asked one question. What do you want to do? Not what was right. Not what would people think. Not could you save him. What do you want to do? I said, I don't know. And that was the truth. Because anger was easy when Ryan was abstract. A villain in an old story. A name I didn't say. But dying people become complicated. Not innocent. Complicated. For 3 days, I carried the letter in my briefcase without opening it. On the 4th night, after Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and read it. Ethan, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I deserve even that much. Probably not. I've written this letter 10 times and thrown it away every time because there's no version of sorry big enough for what I did. I slept with Claire because I wanted what you had. That's the truth. It wasn't love. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't one mistake. I envied you. You had a home. A wife who believed in you. Parents who respected you more than I thought they did. Even if they never showed it right. I told myself you had everything and I had nothing. That was a lie. I had plenty. I just wanted yours. When she got pregnant, I panicked. Mom and Dad tried to fix it the way they always fix things for me. By making someone else carry the cost. You carried it. I let you. That is the worst thing I've ever done. Noah is my son. He is the only good thing that came out of something unforgivable. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I am not writing to ask for your liver. Mom probably already did that. I'm writing because if I die, I don't want to leave the world with you thinking I never knew what I did. I knew. I know. You were the better brother. You always were. Ryan. I read it twice. Then I sat there for a long time. Hannah came in quietly and placed a cup of tea beside me. Are you okay? No. She touched my shoulder. Do you believe him? I looked at the letter. I believe he's dying. That was all I could say. The next morning, I called the hospital in Iowa. Not my mother. Not my father. The hospital. I asked to speak with the transplant coordinator. I explained that I had been contacted as a possible living donor and wanted information. Information is not consent. That sentence became my anchor. The coordinator was professional and careful. She explained the process, risks, testing, recovery, and the fact that living liver donation was major surgery. She also made it clear that donors could withdraw at any point, for any reason, confidentially. Your decision must be voluntary, she said. No pressure. I almost laughed again. No pressure. My entire family was pressure. I agreed to preliminary blood testing at a Denver partner clinic. I didn't tell my parents. Hannah drove me. Before I went in, she held my hand and said, whatever the result is, you are not obligated to disappear inside their needs again. I nodded. The test came back a week later. I was a potential match. I sat in my car outside work reading the message on my phone. And for a few seconds, I couldn't move. A match. Life has a cruel sense of timing. The one person Ryan had damaged most was one of the few who might save him. I didn't call anyone that day. That evening, I watched Lily build a crooked tower of blocks on the living room floor. Every time it fell, she laughed and started again. I thought about surgery, risks, recovery, pain, time away from my daughter, time away from work, giving part of my body to a man who had taken my marriage, my family, my hometown, and years of peace. Then I thought about Noah, a little boy with a dying father, a little boy who had not asked to be born into betrayal. I hated that my mother had used him against me. I hated that it worked. 2 days later, I flew to Iowa. Not to donate, to see the truth for myself. Hannah came with me. Lily stayed with Hannah's parents. I told no one except the transplant coordinator, who arranged for me to visit the hospital privately. Cedar Falls looked smaller than I remembered. The streets were the same, but I was not. The diner where Claire and I used to eat breakfast was still there. The park where I proposed still had the same wooden bridge. My old house had new shutters and a basketball hoop in the driveway. A stranger's life had grown over the ruins of mine. At the hospital, I saw Ryan through the window before I entered his room. He looked nothing like the brother I remembered. Thin, yellowed, tired, his cheeks hollow, his hands resting on the blanket like they belonged to an old man. For the first time, I felt the full weight of time. He turned his head. When I stepped in, his eyes filled instantly. Ethan. I stood near the door. Ryan. He tried to sit up. I said, "Don't." He gave a weak laugh, then winced. "You came." "I came to talk." He nodded. "That's more than I deserve." I hated that line because it sounded rehearsed, but his face didn't. His face looked stripped of performance. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Did you read the letter?" "Yes. I meant it." "I know." His eyes searched mine, maybe looking for forgiveness. I didn't offer it. He looked down. "Mom told you about the transplant." "Yes. I told her not to." I raised an eyebrow. He smiled faintly. "I know. Hard to believe I grew boundaries on my deathbed. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Almost." He said, "I'm sorry." The words landed softly. Not because they fixed anything. Because they were too late to make noise. Ryan's voice shook. "I was jealous of you my whole life. That surprised me." He looked at me. "You probably think that's ridiculous." "Yes." He nodded. "Mom and Dad protected me, but they respected you. They trusted you. They expected me to fail and expected you to fix things. I hated you for being the proof that I was weak." I said nothing. He continued. "When Claire looked at me like I was interesting, I took it. I didn't care what it would do to you. Not enough. And after, when everyone panicked, I let them build the lie because it was easier than facing you. I said, 'You were going to let me raise your son.'" He closed his eyes. "Yes. Say it while looking at me." He opened his eyes. "I was going to let you raise my son." The room went quiet. I felt Hannah, just outside the door. She had offered to wait in the hall, giving me space but staying close enough that I wasn't alone. I asked, "Why did you marry Claire?" Ryan laughed bitterly. "Because everyone said we had destroyed your life for love, so we tried to make that true." That sentence stayed with me. He said the marriage had been miserable. Claire resented him for being weak. He resented her for reminding him of what they had done. My parents tried to force them into a family picture that looked respectable from the outside. Noah was loved, but everything around him was poison. "Claire left when Noah was 3, Ryan said. "She still sees him, but not much." I looked at him. "She abandoned him too?" "She says being around us reminds her of the worst thing she ever did." I had no words. Ryan wiped his eyes. "I don't want you to donate." That startled me. "What?" "I don't want your liver. Not if it costs you anything. Not if Mom and Dad pressured you. Not if you came because of Noah. I'm scared to die. Ethan. I'm not going to pretend I'm noble. I'm terrified. But I don't want to take from you again." For the first time in 7 years, I saw my brother without the golden light my parents had always shined on him. He was just a broken man. A selfish man. A guilty man. Maybe even a sorry man. But sorry did not erase damage. I said, "I got tested." He stared at me. "Why?" "I don't know." He cried then, quietly, with one hand over his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God, Ethan, I'm so sorry." I left the room before I broke. In the hallway, Hannah wrapped her arms around me. I pressed my forehead against her shoulder and shook. A few minutes later, I saw my parents at the end of the corridor. My mother covered her mouth. My father froze. Neither of them had expected me. My mother rushed toward me, but Hannah stepped slightly in front of me. Not aggressively, just enough. My mother noticed. Pain flashed across her face. "Good," I thought again, then felt tired of thinking it. My father said, "You came." I said, "I came to see Ryan, not you." My mother whispered, "Did you get tested?" I looked at her. "That's the first thing you ask me?" She looked ashamed, but my father didn't. Ethan, we don't have time for this. Hannah spoke then. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. You don't speak to my husband that way. My father blinked, surprised. My mother looked at Hannah, like she had just realized I had a life they knew nothing about. I said, I am a potential match. My mother sobbed with relief. My father closed his eyes. I raised a hand. I have not agreed to donate. My father's eyes opened. What more do you need? The old Ethan would have shrunk under that tone. The new Ethan looked him dead in the eye. I need you to understand something. Whether Ryan lives or dies, you do not get me back. My mother recoiled. Ethan. No. Listen carefully. If I donate, it will not be because we are a family again. It will not be because I forgive what you did. It will not be because you earned access to my life. My father's jaw clenched. You'd save your brother and still punish us? I shook my head. You still think boundaries are punishment. Hannah's hand found mine. I continued. You chose Ryan when he betrayed me. You chose the lie. You chose appearances. You chose to call me cruel when I refused to raise his child. You don't get to use this crisis to rewrite history. My mother was crying silently. I said, I have a wife. Her name is Hannah. I have a daughter. Her name is Lily. They are my family. You are people from my past who hurt me. My father looked stunned. Maybe because he finally understood he had lost authority over me. My mother whispered, Can we meet them? No. The word came easily. She nodded as if she expected it, but it still broke her. Over the next week, I completed more evaluations. Medical, psychological, ethical. Every professional involved asked some version of the same question. Do you feel pressured? Yes, I thought. But not in the way they meant. I felt pressured by memory. By Noah's existence. By the knowledge that if I walked away, Ryan might die. By the fear that saving him would betray the younger version of me who had crawled out of that motel room with nothing. Dr. Patel took an emergency video session with me. I told her I didn't know what forgiveness meant anymore. She said, forgiveness is not the same as access. It is not the same as reconciliation, and it is not a prerequisite for mercy. Mercy. That word stayed with me. Not love. Not obligation. Mercy. I asked Hannah what she thought. She said, I'm afraid of losing you in surgery. I'm afraid of watching them pull you back into their chaos, but I also know you. If Ryan dies and you never tried, I think part of you will wonder forever. I hated how well she knew me. The final decision came after I met Noah. I didn't plan to. I was leaving the hospital when I saw a little boy sitting in the waiting area with a coloring book. He had Ryan's eyes and Claire's mouth. My mother sat beside him, looking exhausted. Noah looked up at me. Are you Ethan? My mother went pale. I looked at her. She whispered. He's seen pictures. Of course he had. I crouched a few feet away, keeping distance. Yes. He studied me with the blunt honesty of children. Grandma says you're my uncle. The word hit hard. Uncle. I said, technically yes. He frowned. What does technically mean? Despite everything, I smiled. It means yes, but grown-ups made it complicated. He nodded like that made perfect sense. My dad is really sick. I know. Grandma says you might help. I looked at my mother sharply. She looked away. Noah kept coloring. My dad cries when he thinks I'm sleeping, he said. He says he did bad things before I was born. My throat tightened. Noah looked up again. Did he do bad things to you? Children can walk straight through locked doors. Adults spend years building. I said, yes. Noah nodded slowly. Did he say sorry? Yes. Did it fix it? I almost couldn't answer. No. He looked down at his crayons. When I break something, saying sorry doesn't fix it either. I have to clean it up. I stared at him. A 6-year-old understood what my parents never had. I said, you're right. He picked up a green crayon. If my dad dies, Grandma says he'll go to heaven. But I don't want him to go yet. That was the moment my anger stopped being enough. Not because my parents deserved anything. Not because Ryan deserved my sacrifice. Because Noah deserved a chance not to have his life defined by the sins that created it. I agreed to donate, but I set conditions. All communication would go through the hospital or my lawyer. My parents would not visit me during recovery unless I requested it. They would not contact Hannah. They would never contact Lily. Ryan would sign documents acknowledging the history, the paternity, and the fact that I had no legal or emotional obligation to Noah beyond what I freely chose. My parents would sign a statement admitting they knew about the affair and helped conceal it. My father exploded when he heard that. This is humiliation, he said. I said, no, this is documentation. He refused at first. My mother begged him. Ryan signed immediately. My father held out for 2 days. Then the doctors told them Ryan's time was narrowing. He signed. The surgery happened on a cold morning in November. Before they took me back, Hannah kissed me and tried to look brave. I saw fear in her eyes. I said, I'm coming back. You better, she whispered. Our daughter still needs someone to build terrible block towers with. I laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it was real. Ryan was in a bed nearby, prepped for surgery. They rolled him close enough for a moment. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I don't deserve this. I said, no, you don't. He nodded, accepting it. I added, live anyway. He broke. Then they wheeled me away. Recovery was brutal. No inspirational music. No clean movie ending. Pain woke me in waves. I couldn't stand without help. I hated the weakness. I hated the tubes. I hated the way my body felt borrowed. But I lived. Ryan lived too. My parents tried to visit. I said no. My mother sent flowers. I had the nurse give them to another patient. My father sent a message through the lawyer. Tell Ethan we are grateful. I didn't respond. Ryan wrote another letter during recovery. This one was shorter. You saved my life after I helped ruin yours. I will spend the rest of my life knowing that. I won't ask you for anything again. I'll try to become someone who deserved a second chance, even if I didn't deserve yours. I kept that letter, not because it healed me. Because it reminded me that mercy could exist without surrender. I returned to Denver 6 weeks later. Lily was angry at me for being gone, and clung to me for 3 days. Hannah cried in the shower when she thought she couldn't hear. I moved slowly. I healed slowly. But I healed. My parents sent cards every holiday. I did not answer. Ryan sent updates twice a year through my lawyer. Sober. Working part-time. Parenting Noah. In therapy. No requests. No emotional traps. Just updates. After 2 years, I agreed to receive one email directly from him. It said, Noah asked why you don't come to Thanksgiving. I told him because adults made choices that hurt you, and you are allowed to stay where you feel safe. He said that made sense. Thank you for letting me tell him the truth. I read that email 3 times. Then I replied with one sentence. Tell Noah. I hope he's doing well. That was all. It was enough. People love stories where forgiveness looks like reunion. A son returns home. A family hugs. Everyone cries around a dinner table. The past becomes a lesson instead of a wound. That is not my story. I never moved back to Cedar Falls. My parents never met Lily. Claire wrote once, years later. I didn't read it. Hannah asked if I wanted to burn it, and we did, in a little fire pit in our backyard while Lily roasted marshmallows and asked why grown-ups smiled at burning paper. I told her, sometimes fire is how you say goodbye. Ryan survived. He stayed sober, as far as I know. He became a better father than he had been a brother. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it didn't. Life is not a courtroom where every sentence balances neatly. Noah grew up knowing the truth in age-appropriate pieces. When he turned 12, he sent me a letter. Dear Uncle Ethan, Dad told me more about what happened before I was born. I don't know what to say except thank you. I'm sorry my life started with people hurting you. I hope you know I don't think you owed us anything. I cried when I read that. Not because of Ryan. Because a child born from betrayal had grown into someone kind enough to understand boundaries. I wrote back. Dear Noah, you never owed me an apology for being born. Your life is yours, not the mistake of the people around you. I hope you build something good with it. That was the beginning of a small connection. Not family in the traditional sense. Not holidays or reunions. Just letters. Careful. Honest. Free of pressure. My mother died when I was 48. Cancer. My father called from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. He said, your mother is gone. I sat down slowly. I had imagined that news before. I thought I would feel nothing. Instead, I felt grief rise up from a place I thought had dried out years earlier. Grief is strange. You can mourn someone without wanting them back. My father asked if I would come to the funeral. I said no. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, she loved you. I closed my eyes. I know. She regretted it. I know. Does that matter? I thought about it. Yes, I said. But not enough to change my answer. He cried then. I had never heard my father cry. I lost both my sons. He said. I said. No, Dad. You kept the one you chose. Then I hung up. It was the last time we spoke. I don't tell this story because I think I am a hero. I'm not. I have been angry. Bitter. Cold. Afraid. I have imagined saying cruel things and sometimes actually said them. I have withheld forgiveness because it was the only power I had left. I have also given mercy when nobody had the right to demand it. Both things are true. That is what betrayal does. It makes you complicated. But here is what I know now. Leaving was not weakness. Disappearing was not cowardice. Refusing to raise my brother's child as my own was not cruelty. Protecting my wife and daughter from the people who destroyed me was not punishment. And saving Ryan's life did not mean giving him mine again. My brother got my wife pregnant. My parents took his side. So I disappeared. Years later, they needed me back because he was dying. I came back only long enough to prove something none of them had ever understood. I could be merciful without being theirs. I could give something priceless without reopening the door. I could save a life and still choose my own. And when I flew home to Denver after the surgery, weak and hurting, Hannah waiting beside me, Lily running into my arms at the airport with a paper sign that said "Welcome home, Daddy," I finally understood what home really was. It was not the place that raised me. It was not the people who shared my blood. It was the life I built after they broke the old one. And this time, no one was ever going to take it from me again.